One day, I received a call from my son, Matthew. "Where's Dad now? Is there something you need?" If you're looking for Dad, he's working at the headquarters now and staying in the company's dorm for singles. For a while, Matthew was silent, then he started speaking hesitantly. "There's no such dorm at Dad's company." "Why would you know something like that?" According to Matthew, while he was job hunting, he attended a joint company information session. My husband Brian's company was also participating, and other students were asking if there was a dorm for singles. He remembered that. Why would he lie about going to a singles dorm? I felt uneasy. Matthew's silence continued. "Do you know something, Matthew?" "This is a bit hard to say, but it seems like Dad is having an affair." "Could you have mistaken him for someone else?" "I understand how you feel, Mom, but it was definitely Dad." Now it was my turn to fall silent. I didn't know what to say. My hand trembled as I held the receiver. "I'm Jessica, 43, a housewife. I live with my husband, Brian, 45. Our son, Matthew, 23, left home when he entered university. We get along well with my in-laws, who occasionally visit our home. I've heard from friends that having the mother-in-law over is usually unwelcome. But I don't mind it, having chats with them is a nice distraction. My father-in-law, Joseph, 68, and my mother-in-law, Stephanie, 67, get along well and often go out together. They never skip their daily walk for health. Today, my in-laws stopped by after their walk to bring some donuts from a nearby shop. I love those donuts, so I can't help but smile. I made coffee for my in-laws, and we enjoyed the donuts together. Eating something delicious makes everyone smile. Matthew called the other day. Seems like he's doing well. I wonder if he's managing okay as a working adult. I'm worried. Matthew will be fine. He's responsible and considerate, the type everyone likes. I hope so. Jessica, you need to let go a bit. I understand the worry, but Matthew is a grown man now. Matthew loves his grandparents. He's been contacting them regularly since his university days. I always wonder why he calls at exactly 8:50 in the evening. I wondered why. Noticing my curiosity, Joseph began to explain. Most people watch dramas after 9 p.m., so he calls during the commercial breaks. Calling after 9 p.m. would interrupt the drama, which would be inconvenient. That made sense to me. Such thoughtfulness made me think he would do well in his career too. That night, I mentioned to Brian that his parents had visited. But his reaction was tepid. I couldn't help but wonder if his teenage rebellion phase was still ongoing. Brian and his parents don't seem very close. So, the conversation ended with that one word, failing to continue. My in-laws are friendly and gentle. It's hard to believe Brian is their son. While we were dating, he was always smiling and gentlemanly, always walking on the side closer to the road. But after we got married, Brian changed completely. His tone became arrogant, acting as if he was supporting me by himself. I wonder if the fault lies with Brian for deceiving me, or with myself for not seeing through him. Now, it feels like our child is the only thing keeping us together. But Brian seemed unusually cheerful today. I've been transferred to work at the headquarters this time. Finally, my luck is turning around. That's great to hear. I was pleased, for a different reason. I hoped an increase in salary would mean he could contribute more to our living expenses. Brian only gives me the money for living expenses, managing the finances himself. I don't even know how much he earns. Up until now, we've just managed to cover our living costs, but it's been a life without any extras. I hoped this would allow us to live a little more comfortably. However, His next words shattered that hope. I've decided to stay in the company's dorm for singles for the time being. It's too far to commute from here, and renting a room would cost too much. I had no objections to Brian's working away from home. In fact, I was all for it. You'll be on your own, so I'll be reducing the money a bit. My living expenses are involved too, so this amount should be fine, right? The amount he mentioned was less than half of what it is now. With this, even one person couldn't live properly. If you're short on money, you should just get a part-time or whatever you like to do. I was so astonished that he left me speechless. You don't have to force yourself to come see me. The fare's a waste, and the dorm is off limits to women anyway. Not that I had any intention of going, but the idea of living expenses being cut by more than half was unbelievable. You're getting promoted, aren't you? Why reduce the living expenses? That's weird. I'm not saying I won't give you living expenses. If you're not happy with it, how about I stop giving any? I had no choice but to remain silent when he said that. Who would want to visit such a terrible husband, I thought. However, I didn't realize that this was a cunning way to make me lose the desire to visit Brian. Reluctantly, I decided to work a part-time job. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have enough for my own food expenses. I visited the employment center for the first time. Many people were there seeking jobs. I printed out the details of the companies I was interested in and waited for my turn. It must have been nearly an hour before it was finally my turn. They contacted the company for me. They said I could have an interview right away. It was close to my home and convenient for commuting. The place I visited based on the address was a small office in a mixed-use building. When I knocked on the door and entered, the office was quite different from what I had imagined. It had a homely atmosphere. The person in charge of the interview was very nice. He introduced himself as David. He was just my type. I honestly told him that I had not worked since getting married and was anxious. This place isn't noisy, and if anything comes up, you can tell me. After a simple question, they said they would contact me later, and I left the office. I was contacted soon after for the job. The work was simple clerical work, and the female colleague teaching me the job was a friendly person. Especially David, who conducted the interview, was considerate towards me and always made a point to talk to me. We were about the same age and very easy to talk to. I decided to enjoy living alone, stopping by a cafe for coffee on the way home. However, it was a mistake to inform Brian of my current situation. The freedom I had finally obtained was quickly taken away. Brian continued to control me. Brian would call home in the evening. If I didn't answer, he would persistently ask the next day why I didn't. Moreover, even if I did answer the phone, he would call again an hour later or 30 minutes later, irregularly 2 or 3 times. I argued back. I became unable to leave the house from the evening. He intended not to give me any freedom. Then one day, I got a call from Matthew. Where's Dad now? Is there something you need? If you're looking for Dad, he's working at the headquarters now and staying in the company's dorm for singles. For a while, Matthew was silent, then he started speaking hesitantly. There's no such dorm at Dad's company. Why would you know something like that? According to Matthew, while he was job hunting, he attended a joint company information session. Brian's company was also participating, and other students were asking if there was a dorm for singles. The company's representative said there wasn't a dorm, but they provide housing assistance. Why would he lie about going to a singles dorm? I felt uneasy. Matthew's silence continued. Do you know something, Matthew? This is a bit hard to say, but it seems like Dad is having an affair. Just when I thought he was about to start talking, he began to reveal something unbelievable. Today, he was making sales calls with a colleague. "We're going to this company next." The company his colleague pointed out was the one Brian worked for. He might run into Brian. He wondered what kind of face he should make if that happened. Brian and Matthew don't get along. They have been on bad terms since Matthew's rebellious teenage years. Today's visit was just to greet the sales manager in charge. The meeting ended quickly. It was past 5 p.m. His colleague said they were heading straight home and that he could go home too. Even though Matthew had a strained relationship with his father, he thought he should greet him as a business courtesy, if possible. Not sure if he would see him, Matthew waited outside the company for a while to see if Brian would come out. He saw someone who looked like Brian and was about to call out to him. However, a young woman came running after Brian. Brian, with a smile he never showed at home, started walking with the woman. Matthew thought something was suspicious and hid himself. The woman appeared to be about Matthew's age. She was beautiful and seemed to have a great figure. Brian, unaware of Matthew's presence, leaned in close to the woman and headed into the night. They entered a fancy restaurant and, after about an hour, went into a chic bar. Matthew followed them, feeling like a detective, but had to make sure he wasn't found. Moreover, it was tough because he had to stay in the area for a long time without looking out of place. And then came the problem. Unfortunately, the two disappeared into a motel. I was shaken when I heard Matthew's story.
"Could you have mistaken him for someone else?"
"Mom, I understand how you feel, but it was definitely Dad." Now it was my turn to fall silent. I didn't know what to say. My hand trembled as I held the receiver. Brian was having an affair. And with a woman about the same age as our son. My mind went blank. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'll take care of this, so just pretend you don't know for a while." "Do you have a plan?" "Yeah, I won't let Dad get away with this." "Making you sad, I won't forgive him." I was grateful for Matthew's strong words. He was all I could rely on now. Almost a month had passed since then. There had been no contact from Matthew, and I was getting anxious. The regular calls from Brian kept coming. I wanted to confront him about the affair, but I followed Matthew's advice and said nothing. The thought of him going to a motel with a young woman, about the same age as Matthew, made me dizzy with anger. And the two of them would mock me in my dreams. "We have no use for an old woman anymore. Go away. Don't show up in front of us. I don't want to see your dreary face anymore." How many times did I have that same dream? Each time, I woke up tormented. I even started falling asleep at work.
"Jessica, you look pale. Are you not feeling well?"
"I haven't been able to sleep well recently."
"Sounds like insomnia. Do you have something on your mind?"
I couldn't tell the truth, so I gave a vague response. Amid these restless days, I received a happy message from Matthew. He wanted to throw a party with his first paycheck to buy presents for everyone. He wanted to give out the presents at my in-laws' house over the weekend. "You don't have to go through the trouble. But still, I'm happy." It felt real that Matthew had become a working adult. "I can't give anything fancy, but look forward to it." He didn't bring up Brian's affair. Not wanting to spoil the celebration, I didn't either. And so the weekend came and I went to my in-laws' house early to help prepare the party food. It feels like just yesterday he was wearing a backpack, and now he's a working adult. Time flies, doesn't it? We age in the blink of an eye too. I feel like it was just yesterday that Matthew was born. What my in-laws said felt very real to me. Brian was supposed to come today too. How many months has it been since we last met? Should I confront him about the affair? I was troubled by the thought. I laid out the dishes Stephanie and I had prepared on the table. When the doorbell rang, it was Matthew. "You're early. Joseph and Stephanie have been looking forward to seeing you." Seeing Matthew after a long time, he seemed a bit more grown up. Going into society must have matured him.
You must be tired. Come in and relax.
The in-laws were delighted that Matthew had come. Joseph even came to the entrance to greet him.
Good to see everyone's well. Thanks for preparing all this today.
Matthew was surrounded by us and led into the living room. While I was preparing drinks for everyone, Matthew was bombarded with questions.
Have you gotten used to your job? Are you being bullied? Are you eating properly?
The in-laws had a mountain of questions, one after the other. Matthew answered all the questions without showing any sign of displeasure.
Everyone's taking good care of me, and little by little, I'm being entrusted with more work. Plus, I'm getting along with everyone. We get proper meals in the dormitory morning and evening, so there's no need to worry.
Knowing that Matthew was fitting in at the company seemed to reassure the in-laws.
Still, Brian is late. The food will get cold.
While we were talking about it, the doorbell rang. It was Brian, as expected. "Sorry for being late. Work just wouldn't end." And so the dinner started. We prepared dishes with Matthew's favorites as the main. Matthew kept saying how delicious everything was. In contrast, Brian was eating with a sullen face. After the meal, we moved to the living room. It was finally time for Matthew to give out his presents. First, for Grandma and Grandpa, this. What was handed to Joseph was a long box tied with a ribbon.
I wonder what it is. Let me open it.
Please do. It's something Grandpa has been wanting. It was a fountain pen from a famous overseas brand. Joseph often had occasions to write, and I had heard that he longed for this fountain pen. It was impressive that Matthew remembered such a conversation. Stephanie was given a hat. It suited her very well. A must-have for fashion. Wear it a lot. The in-laws had tears in their eyes.
We'll use it with care. It will be a treasure.
Just don't keep it tucked away in a drawer because it's too precious. It's meaningless if you don't use it.
We know. We will use it properly.
For Mom, this. It was a tasteful brooch. Let's go shopping together next time. I'll help you find clothes that match this brooch. I felt tears welling up too. Brian watched us with a cold eye. What will you give me? I'm looking forward to it. Matthew's expression suddenly changed.
For Dad, this.
Matthew handed over a large envelope. Brian, with a puzzled look, spread its contents on the table. Several photographs came out. And as soon as Brian saw the photos, the color drained from his face. Brian tried to hide the photos, but it was too late.
What is this?
It's nothing. Just a joke from Matthew, right? Brian glared at Matthew.
It's not a joke. The report is inside the envelope.
Matthew took out a report from the envelope. It detailed Brian's actions. The affair partner was Nicole, 24 years old, a woman from Brian's department.
What are you doing? And with a woman not much older than your son, are you out of your mind?
Joseph's voice was filled with anger, and Brian shrank back. Usually gentle, when Joseph got angry, his intensity was formidable.
Using your salary for this, you should spend it on better things.
Brian, unable to come up with an excuse, started shouting something incomprehensible.
It's your fault I had to spend money on this. Apologize to Mom.
Stephanie started crying out loud. It's my fault for raising such a son. Jessica, forgive me. Stephanie apologized deeply in front of me.
It's not your fault, Stephanie. Please, don't apologize.
I couldn't let Stephanie apologize like this. I told her,
I also have my faults. It's not your fault at all.
Brian, explain yourself. Brian, as if resigned, began to talk about the affair. Nicole had joined the company the year before last. Brian was assigned as her mentor for the new employees. Although Brian was taciturn at home, outside he always wore a smile and played the role of a refreshing man. It seemed only a matter of time before Nicole was drawn to such a Brian. She apparently found young men unsatisfying. Her attraction to a somewhat bad older man was also due to her family background. Nicole was raised in a single-parent family. Perhaps she longed for a father figure. Or maybe she was just waiting for Brian's invitation. They soon became involved. It turns out the transfer to the headquarters was true. They rented an apartment and started living together. So, the reason my living expenses were cut was to fund the apartment. He was worried I might cheat too, because he was having an affair himself. That's why those persistent evening calls happened. Despite his own infidelity, he couldn't bear the thought of me cheating. Such a selfish way of thinking. Not that I had any intention of cheating, though.
I'm cutting ties with you. I'll get Jessica a top-notch lawyer and make you pay the maximum compensation. Get out of this house right now.
Brian fled the house as if running from Joseph's wrath. The in-laws kept apologizing.
Jessica, you don't have to worry about anything. We'll take care of everything. We'll even provide financial support.
You don't have to go that far. I have Matthew. That's not necessary, Grandpa.
No, let me do this. I won't be satisfied otherwise.
Trust us, Jessica. In reality, I couldn't even afford to consult a lawyer, so I had no choice but to rely on their offer. The proceedings went smoothly. Brian seemed to be deeply in love with Nicole. He was willing to lose everything as long as he had Nicole. The divorce settlement recognized economic abuse, adding alimony to the compensation. Unpaid living expenses and other funds were also included, amounting to a significant sum. After paying the compensation, Brian was left with almost nothing. I acquired the house as part of the divorce property distribution, under the condition that I continue paying the mortgage, which the in-laws paid as an apology. Brian and Nicole's affair became well known at the company. Nicole, mentally distressed, quit her job and returned to her parents' home. She had dreams and had been saving money. But now, far from realizing them, she was severely in shock. It felt as though her dreams had been devoured. While I'm not responsible for Nicole's breakdown, it still pains me. Sensing my distress, Matthew said,
Mom shouldn't worry about this. There's nothing we can do but forget.
He's right. Yet my heart is heavy. My hometown is a remote island, not easily accessible by Brian. In such a small village, I can't predict the rumors if Brian were to visit. He was advised not to come at all. Now divorced, my husband is a stranger to me. His life in an apartment is of no concern to me. We should each live our own lives, but Brian's clinginess is exasperating.
I was wrong. Let's start over. I only realized your value after losing you. Nicole was just a fling.
Brian's calls became frequent. Lately, I just let him talk and then hang up without saying a word. From what he says, his room seems quite filthy. He once sent a photo of his room via smartphone. It felt like the stench was wafting through the screen. I deleted it immediately.
I've been taken off sales duty. I keep messing up, and they say my clothes smell. It's all your fault. To think I was married to such a man disgusts me. How will you take responsibility? My affair is out, and I, who was once top in sales, am now relegated to compiling company history. It's as if they want me to quit. Can't he see that it's all his fault? How much does he need to blame others before he's satisfied? Has Brian lost all reason? One day, Brian called again. I'm coming over tonight. Be ready. The call was abruptly ended. I was terrified. What should I do? What could Brian possibly do? Hesitantly, I called Matthew. I'm on a business trip right now. I'll figure something out, but make sure you lock the door and don't go outside. How he intended to handle this while on a business trip was beyond me. Regardless, I locked all the doors and secured the chain on the front door. Night fell. Too scared to turn on any lights. As I was trembling in fear, the video doorbell suddenly rang. The shock made me jump. There was a violent knocking at the front door. I know you're in there. Open up. At Brian's yelling, I crouched down, trembling. Then, from outside, I could hear someone arguing. Then, silence returned. The video doorbell rang. Joseph appeared on the monitor. I hurried to the front door and opened it. You can relax now. I've chased Brian away. Overwhelmed with relief, I broke down crying right there. Stephanie entered following the flustered Joseph. Don't worry anymore. I won't let him near you ever again. I invited my in-laws inside. While serving them coffee, I expressed my gratitude. You shouldn't be the one to lower your head. We are to blame for raising such a son. It was thanks to Matthew contacting them that my in-laws had come. They had hidden in the shadows waiting for Brian to appear. Tomorrow, I'll talk to Brian. A captain I know is looking for crew. It's deep sea fishing, and once on the ship, you can't return to States for a year. He needs to straighten out his character. Actually, we've covered all the compensation. He will listen to us. Even such a foolish son is dear to us. Laugh at us, thinking we're foolish parents. Any parent would find their child dear. Jessica, you must have been worried about Nicole, the affair partner. We've returned her money. She was doing well. We've caused you inconvenience. It must have been hard from afar. Plus, returning the money. No, keep the money. We won't be satisfied otherwise. Sometime later, Joseph informed me that Brian had boarded the ship. Whether Brian reforms or not is no longer my concern. Now, I'm just happy that Matthew could participate in a big project at work. I hope he achieves great results there. My relationship with my in-laws is still strong, and they visit from time to time. Jessica, you're still young. Life is ahead of you. It's too early to grow old. I've started seeing someone. It's David from work. After Brian's infidelity, I just thought he was a good person. Talking to David every day at work, I realized I was becoming calmer, but it took me a while to understand that these feelings were more than that. It was an emotion I hadn't felt in years. Now, having divorced, I was able to face those feelings honestly and asked him out. Then David also confessed that he had fallen for me at first sight during the interview. Like the seasons come and go, spring has come again for me.
You're good enough for dog food. Come on, say bow. I never thought I'd be subjected to such humiliation. Although our marriage is still fresh, I've tried to comply with this woman's demands in my own way. But it seems all for naught. She might be an alien or something. That explains everything. I don't know the language aliens speak, but I no longer wish to talk to her. My name is Allison. I'm a 32-year-old office worker. Perhaps influenced by my game-loving older brother, I've been fond of games since childhood, especially role-playing games that immerse me in unreal worlds. I've made many friends through social media, which I started a few years ago. One of them is my husband, Carmine. We both liked the same game and shared favorite characters and spells. When a new game came out, we'd go buy it together. After years of such companionship, we became conscious of each other and decided to get married. Carmine's parents are Stanley, who is often away on solo assignments, and Bianca, a housewife. Stanley, due to his busy work, comes home only a few times a year. Carmine's grandmother, Stanley's mother, also lives with them but has been suffering from Alzheimer's for a few years now, and recently, her hearing has declined, making conversation difficult.
Grandma got forgetful all of a sudden when Dad went on his solo assignments. It must have been quite a shock,
he said. Bianca takes care of the grandmother-in-law. Since Carmine lived alone early on, his parents-in-law's home is just Bianca and the grandmother-in-law. I wondered if I would have to take care of a stranger who wasn't even my parent someday. However, both parents-in-law are healthy, and it seems that the opportunity is still far off. I was completely at ease. Until that one phone call. One day, it was my day off, and after finishing all the housework I had accumulated, I was playing my favorite game. Then, an unfamiliar sound rang out in my room. What's that sound again? Oh, a ringtone. I rarely get calls, so I forgot my own ringtone. Seeing the displayed name, I tensed up a bit. A call from Bianca? It was the first time I got a call from my mother-in-law, Bianca. And though nervous, I thought something might have happened, so I hurriedly answered. Hello? You're late. It's common sense for a working adult to answer promptly when a superior calls. The sudden sarcasm made me instinctively want to hang up, but I refrained. Sorry, I'll be careful. So what can I do for you today? As if. You're free on your days off, right? Playing with that incomprehensible toy? Do some work. Fulfill your duties as Carmine's wife. Told to visit the parents-in-law's home on my next day off, Bianca hung up. After the call, I was in a daze for a while. Why must I be subjected to sarcasm from a call I rarely get? I thought about ignoring it, but she is Carmine's mother, after all. Maybe I'll just listen to what she has to say. I decided to think that way. Of course, I reported to Carmine that night.
I'm really sorry. It's probably going to be a hassle, so you don't have to go.
It was honestly comforting to hear Carmine say that. Still, it's infuriating. At times like this, there's a place I always go to after work. Hello? Oh, if it isn't Allison, something bothering you? Susan from the pottery school greets me with a smile and those words. I start with a light heart, but now I'm completely engrossed. Susan is about the same age as my grandma, but is still strong and willing to listen to my life problems. She's like a mom to everyone. Of course, pottery is fun, but I come here to talk to Susan. Listen to this, Susan. I got a rare call from Bianca, and it was a parade of sarcasm. You must be free, she said, or do your duty as a wife. I didn't expect to be told such outdated things. Susan always listens to my complaints without a frown. Just ignore that pointless Bianca. There's still such old-fashioned people around. People who say such things are often lenient with themselves. My son's wife is just like that. I may not be blessed with Bianca, but I'm surrounded by kind people. It naturally makes me want to try harder. On my next day off, I did as Bianca told me and headed to the parents-in-law's home. When I parked and headed to the entrance, Bianca was already standing on the porch. Oh, scary. I struggled to stay calm and greeted her. Good morning. The norm is to act 30 minutes earlier. Don't keep your superiors waiting. She said that, and though I had just arrived, I already wanted to leave. I can understand this for work, but why must I be scolded for her inexplicable convenience? And a 30-minute early visit can be inconvenient for the other party, which I don't want to do. No, but it's still 10 minutes early. As I tried to answer, I was shouted at. Don't talk back. Am I in the military or something? I looked up, resigned. I will never open my heart to this person again, no matter what happens. And I will never take care of her in her old age. Even if offered a large sum of money, I refuse. Really, you're late for the appointment. Well, I'm off now. Bianca said this and was about to leave, so I stopped her. Wait a minute, you call me here without explanation, and I don't understand. Well, I'm going out until tonight, so you will have to come here on your days off from now on and do the housework. And take care of the person holed up in the back room, too. After saying this, Bianca left in her car. I've never met someone so hard to communicate with. She seemed kind when I met her with Stanley and Carmine, but that wasn't the case at all. I thought about going back without doing anything to avoid being scolded again. But more than that, I hadn't met my grandmother-in-law yet. Bianca had told grandmother-in-law, but since she didn't understand, she decided on her own that I didn't need to attend the family wedding. By the way, we only had a simple meal and didn't have a wedding ceremony. Later, Carmine and I were supposed to greet her together, but our days off didn't match, and embarrassingly, we never made it. Excuse me. As I opened the entrance door, a shocking scene unfolded. Too dirty. It wasn't quite a garbage house, but it seemed to be a matter of time before it became one. The room was overflowing with things, and a mountain of laundry, washed or not, spread across the floor, and the kitchen sink was full of dishes. Dust had accumulated in the corners of the room, and it was visibly appalling. The last time I came, the room was clean and tidy. What on earth happened? This is too terrible. As I was thinking this, I heard noises from the back room. Ah, grandmother-in-law. Thinking I should greet grandmother-in-law, I went to the room. Excuse me. Oh, since the day Bianca called me, I've been going to the parents-in-law's home as told. I've come to understand that Bianca probably spends every day out and returns home late at night. She doesn't seem to take care of the house or grandmother-in-law at all, and while she arrogantly tells me to do my wife's duties, it's clear that Bianca isn't fulfilling any herself. Maybe she got carried away because I obediently listened. I'm relieved that Carmine, who always plays with toys, finally brought home a wife, but after all, a wife is a stranger. I guess you're a free housekeeper. I was loudly told that once. In this day and age, harassing a son's wife is just unacceptable. Of course, I reported all of Bianca's actions to Carmine, who kept apologizing every time he heard about them. You don't have to go to that house anymore. That's what Carmine told me. He even said he would complain to Bianca himself, but I told him to wait because I had a plan. I continued to visit the parents-in-law's home because I was worried about grandmother-in-law. When Carmine saw that grandmother-in-law and I got along well, he was very pleased. After a few months of those days, while I was cleaning the parents-in-law's home as usual, Bianca said, "There's a memorial service at the end of this month, and people will gather, but make sure you don't say anything unnecessary, okay?" I smiled and replied, "Of course, Bianca." Bianca seemed not to be completely satisfied with my obedient self. The memorial service was for Carmine's grandfather, the grandfather-in-law's death anniversary. He had already passed away by the time I married Carmine, but he was said to be a gentle and kind person. He got along very well with grandmother-in-law, and they used to travel together. Carmine told me they always held hands when they were out. Grandfather-in-law died of cancer, and grandmother-in-law took devoted care of him. But the parents-in-law did not help at all. It's just unbelievable. There's a lot of preparation to do, so make sure you come early, okay? And I think you know what I mean. Bianca said that, and I cheerfully responded, "Yes, I'll act 30 minutes early." Yet she scolded me. "Your voice is too loud, be quiet." I thought about throwing the TV remote at her, but managed to hold back. "You can talk like that now, but just wait, get ready." I looked forward to the day of the memorial service. The long-awaited day of the memorial service. I was told to come 30 minutes early, but I went an hour early. Sure enough, it seemed to be an inconvenience, and Bianca, showing her true colors, came out of the entrance angry, saying, "You're too early. There's such a thing as too much." Honestly, when I saw her face, I thought she was a monster. I quickly cleaned the room and prepared the tables when I heard a cheerful male voice say, "Good morning." Heading to the entrance, I saw the staff from a famous local steakhouse standing there. I had been there once with Carmine, and the meat was tender and quite delicious. However, it's not kind to the wallet, so it's not a place I can often go to. As if saying I was fine, Bianca pushed me aside and began talking to the handsome staff in a slightly high voice. "Good morning. Nice weather today, isn't it? Oof-oo-foo." I saw someone say oof-oo-foo for the first time and went back to preparing. "Hey, hurry up and carry the food that arrived early," I heard Bianca's annoying voice. While thinking, yes, I headed to the kitchen. There I noticed something. Bianca, there's one meal short. Is this a mistake? Shall I call? When I said that, Bianca, with a mean smile, said this. "It's not a mistake. I never prepared a portion for you." I was stunned, never expecting to be treated like this. "After all, today people are gathering, and you, my son's wife, won't have time to eat. How shameless." Feeling like I had been called a greedy person, I finally felt indignant. Maybe because I didn't talk back, she felt good and said, "A housekeeper like you is good enough for dog food. Come on, say bow." Then she put the dog food left over from the dog they used to have in the parents-in-law's home in front of me. At that humiliating act, I couldn't help but laugh. I would never understand this woman, not in a lifetime. Because she must be an alien or something. I have no intention of talking to someone with whom I can't communicate. Thinking that, I shouted at Bianca in a language I didn't know, pretending to speak alien. And for a moment, Bianca's face showed a hint of fear at my sudden behavior. "What? Are you out of your mind? Are you mocking me?" "Yes, I guess so. I've been putting up with it for quite some time now. I don't like living in a house with someone as nasty as you. I don't know what you're upset about, but will you be satisfied if we get a divorce?" "Huh? I won't allow a divorce. Then I'd have to hire another housekeeper. That would be a waste of money." With that, Bianca came at me, trying to grab me.
"Stop it. How disgraceful."
Turning around, there stood Carmine and my father-in-law, Stanley, along with Stanley's brother and his wife, who lived far away. Bianca hadn't noticed them because of our argument, but it was already time for Carmine and the others to arrive. I don't know how long they had been watching, but Bianca became completely subdued, perhaps because Stanley intervened or from the shock. Then it was time for the priest to come to the house. The memorial service ended modestly, and it was time to eat, but grandmother-in-law stayed in her room, saying she wasn't feeling well.
"I haven't eaten this in a while, but the steak here is really good."
While Stanley said that, I was bustling around bringing drinks and such.
"Allison, come eat too. You don't need to do all this."
"Thank you. Come over here." My aunt-in-law Cindy also called out kindly. "Thank you, but it seems there is no steak for me." I pretended to be dejected as I said that, and when Cindy asked, why?" I replied, "I can't possibly say it. Please ask Bianca." Cindy glared at Bianca, who might have been frightened by her gaze, and started saying something ridiculous. "Oh, I ordered the wrong number of steaks. I told Allison to eat my portion, but she declined, saying she was fine. I'm so lucky to have such a nice woman marry into the family." Bianca was sweating profusely, and her eyes were darting around. "Is that so?" Cindy looked at me worriedly. "Yes, that's right." Behind Cindy, I could see Bianca's face completely at ease. That face was so comical, I struggled to keep from laughing. Bianca is always so kind. She points out when I'm lacking social manners. Today, instead of steak, she prepared this for me. I said that and brought out the dog food Bianca had handed me from the kitchen. Bianca turned pale at my unexpected action.
"What's going on? What have you done to my precious wife?"
Carmine asked, but Bianca remained silent. In the quiet room, Stanley spoke up.
"Well, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Allison is married now, so—"
Stanley started joking, and Carmine looked like he was about to grab him. Thinking it better to avoid an assault charge, I decided to call my ace in the hole. "Susan?" Everyone was surprised by my loud call. Then, from a back room, a cheerful voice replied, "Yes?" Out came Susan, grandmother-in-law. It turns out she's the Susan from pottery school. The day Bianca first called me over, we were both shocked to see each other. Never imagining that the grandmother-in-law would be Susan, we finished the housework at the parents-in-law's home together laughing. The parents-in-law's home is a two-family house, and Susan's living space was very tidy. It was obvious that she wasn't sick, but Bianca never suspected. Since Bianca returned home late at night, we went out to eat and for walks. I enjoyed the time spent with my beloved Susan, which is why I was happy to visit the parents-in-law's home. Susan had made me promise not to tell the in-laws about our relationship. I was angry at Bianca's unreasonable words, but knowing it would end someday, I could bear it. Susan didn't attend the memorial service because she didn't want to see the parents-in-law's faces. Susan always prayed for grandfather-in-law's happiness after his death.
Why, Mom, don't you have Alzheimer's?
Stanley asked, puzzled. That's just something this woman misunderstood on her own. With that, Bianca, who had been shrinking herself, was glared at. I wanted to live alone with my husband, but right after getting married, you started living with us for the sake of he's your son, and you and your husband indulged in luxury with the money saved from rent. Susan said this, and Stanley looked uncomfortable. I thought I'd be free when your transfer was decided, but then this woman said she would stay here, and it was the worst. I couldn't even talk about kicking her out because you were never home, and I pretended to be hard of hearing because I didn't want to talk to you. And then you just assumed I had Alzheimer's. It's laughable. Bianca's face turned bright red. What I couldn't forgive the most was being treated as absent from the grandchildren's celebrations. Well, I was very happy when I found out Allison, whom I'd get along with, was the spouse of my grandchildren. Susan said that and smiled at me. Bianca, not finding this amusing, suddenly started. I'm sorry. Allison was always so cold to me. I was frustrated, and that's why I did such a prank today. I truly regret it. But if Allison had been kinder from the start, then I wouldn't have been too... I had no intention of playing along with such a charade. All the precious words you've given me up until now, Bianca, I thought I'd listen to them at home, too. I said that and pulled out a voice recorder I had hidden in my pocket. With each playback, Bianca's face grew paler, and the faces around us grew more severe. Susan and I had planned to expose everything on this day when the relatives gathered, regardless of the steak incident. After listening, Cindy started to laugh. You talk about social common sense, but you've never worked a day in your life. Apparently, Bianca had never worked and had lived a life of leisure. After the children grew up, Bianca began to go out more, causing constant arguments with Stanley. Stanley himself was apparently a habitual adulterer who returned home late every night, participating in school events for the sake of public image, but otherwise maintaining a fake relationship, as I had heard from Carmine. Carmine also hated it and left home as soon as he graduated from high school. That's why, pack your bags and leave right now. This is the precious home of my deceased husband and me. I will never allow you to return, and you too. Susan said this and glared at Stanley. You have another woman out there, don't you? Do as you please, trash son. I'm cutting ties with you. Stanley left the house as if fleeing, perhaps hit too close to home. And Carmine, I know you're busy with work, but come and visit once in a while. I understand if you don't want to, given such foolish parents. Susan said this to Carmine with a slightly sad look. Then we're heading home. As Carmine and I left the house, Bianca, looking furious, chased after me. Wait, clear up this misunderstanding. If I'm thrown out of here, I'll be in trouble. I thought if that was the case, she shouldn't have harassed me to begin with, but it's too late for her words now. I don't understand. Why don't you work? You seem to have a great understanding of how to be a respectful member of society, I said sarcastically and got into the car. She was shouting something outside, but I didn't care. She might as well regret the life she's led as she pleases. As for the former parents-in-law, after being kicked out of the parents-in-law's home, Bianca showed up at Stanley's place where he was working alone. But as Susan predicted, Stanley was already living with his mistress, and Bianca was quickly discarded. Furthermore, it turned out that Bianca had also been having an affair, and even worse, with a married man, and she was sued for damages by his wife. Since both our former parents-in-law had been unfaithful, the damages were sort of offset, but Bianca would likely continue to pay the mistress's husband. Stanley might lessen his burden if he sought damages from his mistress, but to me, they are strangers, and it doesn't matter anymore. They were a match in a way, despite the fake relationship I had heard about. Carmine has no lingering feelings for his former parents and intends never to see them again. I feel the same. As for us, we've decided to live in the parents-in-law's home where Susan lives. The house, once full of unpleasant memories, was transformed as we disposed of all the furniture Bianca had collected, and made significant changes to the interior, making it feel like a completely different home. Susan is surprisingly energetic for her age, but I'm more than willing to take care of her if she ever needs it. Furthermore, next year our family will be growing. I'm looking forward to living a happy life with my beloved family from now on.